Yes, I am the 16th President of the United States. I was born on February 12th, 1809, in a rustic cabin near Hodgenville, Kentucky. At age 9, I lose my beloved mother to the deadly milk sick. Our cow had eaten a poisonous snake root plant. My mom dies a slow, horrible death over a 10-day period. She called me to her bedside with her weak voice. She asked me to keep 3 promises: to be good and kind, to help take care of the family, and to worship the Lord. My father and older cousin Dennis Hanks built the coffin. Paul asked me to carve the pegs for this primitive box. I'll never forget my anguish as we place her in the cold, hard, desolate ground. At age 16, I lose the best friend I've ever had. My older sister Sarah dies giving birth to a stillborn son. Again, I experience deep grief and sorrow. In my early 20s, I meet Anne Rutledge, the daughter of the founder of our small frontier town of New Salem. I love spending time with her. We take long walks together. I enjoy watching her sew beautiful quilts. A typhoid epidemic hits our community. She calls me to her bedside. We spend a couple of private, precious hours together, and she dies the next morning. So I have a profound question for you today. With that kind of start in life, how did I go on to become acknowledged as the greatest leader in American history? One seed of my recovery was planted when I was age 13. Our home had only 3 books: the King James Version of the Bible, Aesop's Fables, and Pilgrim's Progress. I love to read. My favorite book in the scriptures is the Psalms. I've read that so frequently I've many of the 150 chapters memorized. I hear that Josiah Crawford, a farmer who lives about 9 miles down the road, had a copy of The Life of George Washington by Parson Weems. I hightailed it over to Crawford's farm and asked him if I might borrow it. I'm thrilled when he consents. I begin reading it as I saunter home with my long, lanky legs. And upon arriving at our cabin, I prop up my feet on a stool with my back to the fire. I just couldn't put it down. Later on, I climbed up the pegs on the wall to my pole bed. I lit a candle and continued to immerse myself in this fascinating story about the founder of our country. Finally, too tired to continue, I snuffed out the candle and placed the book in a crack in the wall. The next morning, to my dismay, I discovered the book severely damaged from an overnight rain. I trudged back to Mr. Crawford's farm and share the sad news. He exclaimed, "Well, Abe, look yonder. Do you see that 3 acres of corn stubble? You can clear that to repay for the damages." Well, I'm used to hard work. I complete that task in 3 days, and my 75-cent obligation is paid in full. It was quite a surprise when Mr. Crawford declared, "The book is yours, Abe. You've earned it." It became a treasure that fueled my passion to make my life count. I make this special appearance today in hope of inspiring you to make your life count too. And I want to share 5 traits that, when repeated, will become habits that hopefully will develop the character to guide you in your quest. You might think it strange that the ugliest president in history is asking you in trait number 1 to become a good looker. Let me illustrate that with a story about Edward Stanton, my cantankerous, gruff Secretary of War. You see, the patent rights for Eli Whitney's cotton gin were being contested, and the defense hires the best lawyer on the East Coast, the incomparable Edward Stanton. Now, a member of his team reached out to me to participate in preparation, probably because of my budding reputation as one of the brightest young lawyers in Illinois. The trial was to be held in Chicago, and they needed someone with local knowledge. I prepared with my usual diligence. In a last-minute maneuver, the trial is moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. I made the journey with my well-prepared brief. Upon seeing me, Stanton observed my rumpled, ill-fitting suit, awkward gait, unruly hair, and declared to all around, "Keep that ugly gorilla away from my table." To say that I returned to Springfield with my feelings abused would be a gross understatement. In the first year of my presidency, the War Department is in shambles and full of corruption. I called Stanton to the White House. Even as president, he's continued to publicly ridicule some of my early decisions in the press. I'm sure he's scratching his head, wondering, why have I called him into my office? Well, Mr. Stanton, let me get right to the point. I know of your love and desire to keep the Union together. I want you to be my Secretary of War. He wants to think it over. I explain the urgency, and with a little gentle persuasion, he accepts on the spot. He is an exceptional choice. He cleans up the graft and runs the department with ruthless efficiency. So what's my point? Had I been unwilling to forgive Stanton for his earlier behavior, I would have denied the company the benefits of his strong leadership. So how are you treating folks? Are you giving them a second chance? Are you seeing the possibilities for their gifts and talents? You see, looking for good in others is the beginning of constructing a foundation that will help make your life count. What's the next key? Well, I'd like to suggest reading as the second skill to propel you to a lifetime of learning. How many years of education do you expect I received? 8 years, 5, 3? Truth be told, my formal schooling involved 3 winters of 3 to 4 months. In total, a less than 1 year of formal education. I had the thirst for knowledge. I simply read every book I could lay my hands on, and in my early years, as well as the later ones. The Good Book in particular is my favorite. Repeat. In the Good Book, I particularly love the Psalms. Because of reading it so much, I had memorized many of its 150 books. As president, I checked out numerous texts from the Library of Congress on military strategy. It helped me develop the role for the presidency still practiced today, called the Commander-in-Chief. So there you have it. The second key to making your life count. Improve your reading and adopt the habit of a lifetime of learning. Now, as a lawyer, let me present my case on the third key to your success: staying up with current innovations and technology. You see, I'm the only president in history to own a patent. I created a system to get flatboats off the Mississippi sandbars. In 1980, I get elected with another newfangled invention called photography. I credit a portrait of me taken by the famous Civil War photographer Matthew Brady when I was in New York City giving my famous Cooper Union speech as a significant factor in my winning the election. Now, during the Civil War, how did I provide air reconnaissance prior to the invention of the airplane? Well, an inventor shows up at the White House peddling a new device, the hot air balloon. We attach 1,000 feet of telegraph wire. I received the first message ever from something in the sky, and it was sent to my office at the White House. On my weekly walks to the patent office from the White House, I discover the next invention for my boys in blue: the Spencer repeating rifle. I invited the inventor over and we did some target practice out back of the White House. I ordered that weapon immediately. Unfortunately, one of my generals let it sit on his desk for over a year. Don't get me started on the ineptness of some of my generals. It's most gratifying to share with you the next invention, the telegraph. It played a vital role in winning the war. It allowed me to communicate with the front lines. I spent many a night in the government telegraph office waiting for news from the front. I have no doubt it helped preserve the Union. I tried to stay ahead of my time with the latest innovations. To get ahead, you must stay ahead. I rest my case on key number 3. Well, maybe you know of my love of humor and storytelling, and that brings us to key number 4, a lifetime of laughter. Let me share one of my favorite stories. It's about the perfect woman. You see, there was this Southern Illinois preacher who, in the course of his sermon about the only perfect man who ever appeared in the world, he also noted that there was no record in the Bible or anywhere of any perfect woman ever having lived on earth. Whereupon there arose in the rear of the church a persecuted-looking lady who, when the parson took a brief respite from speaking, dramatically announced, "I know a perfect woman. I heard of her every day for the last 6 years." "Who was she?" asked the startled minister. "My husband's first wife," replied the afflicted female. Humorous stories were the medicine that helped me survive the fiery trials of the Civil War. Well, there are the first 4 principles, and they aren't worth a bucket of spit if you don't possess the last quality, honesty and integrity. So how did I get the name Honest Abe? Well, that began when a young lady came to my small store in New Salem. I accidentally overcharged her 6 1/4 cents. I used the wrong measuring weight. I felt so bad I closed shop, walked 7 miles to her place, and returned her 6 1/4 cents. After that incident, folks began to call me Honest Abe in our community. Honesty was simply stamped on my soul. So in conclusion, It's not complicated. There are five